Hi, everybody. I'm gonna do just a little. I'm gonna do a little longer courage teach and see if you find it helpful. I every accountability session I had, just about every event I had so far in 2026 was surrounding a lot of the same like pain point. Like they asked it, like, can we talk about and also practice how to have accountability conversations, feedback conversations, like can we talk about and practice how to have them in a kind, curious way that's aligned with our values? Um, and every single group. And so I think one of the best parts about the courage work is that one of the things I hear a lot, and I think one of the biggest takeaways is once we're in a room together and we're talking about these skills and how to live in the courageous life, you're never alone. What I'm up against, you're up against. And so how do we have hard conversations with people that we deeply care about in a way that actually produces change, that empowers people to change something and get unstuck? Not a conversation where I fix it for you and enable you to stay stuck. That's different. And I think a lot of times we have been taught or we believe that like empathy, compassion, and care is mutually exclusive of accountability and feedback and change. And I believe, and I have found that they are intimately tied. We are more likely to get what we need and want from people, especially the people that we lead, when we first meet them with care, compassion, and empathy and very, very clear expectations. Hard conversations are just hard. They're supposed to be hard. I teach people how to have them. I help people practice them. Do I love having them myself? No. They're hard and they're awkward. And a lot of times we tell ourselves like we avoid hard conversations because we don't want to upset someone else or we don't want to hurt their feelings, and like it's really that's just usually a lie. We're usually unable to have hard conversations or unwilling to have them when we actually need to have them because we don't know how or we're unwilling to navigate our own emotional discomfort. When in reality, to practice hard conversations just really kind of means that you get to choose the courage over the comfort. Like, I don't think hard conversations are ever going to be easy. And I think there's a lot of power in just saying, like, hey, we need to have a tough conversation. It might even feel pretty awkward. And one, I'm wondering, are you in a place to have this conversation right now? And if you're going to ask that question, they get to say, no, I'm not. Like, and they need to go get their stuff together. However, we want to make sure like you're not going to go off and just go make up all of these stories about what this conversation is about. And two, we are actually going to set a time to have this conversation because you cannot leave stuff unresolved. The unspoken is never, ever benign. What you don't say only festers and it will run the show. Okay. I also think one of the big pieces when it comes to hard conversations is it's okay to have notes. It's okay to write stuff down. I think for some people, it's even okay to say something like, especially depending on the relationship, the level of trust, the topic, things like that. Like, I actually wrote down a bunch of stuff because I really don't want to screw this up. That's how much this conversation means to me because I know that if we don't figure out how to move forward through this, that's actually going to be more detrimental to our relationship and our mission and our values, mine and yours. And so like I wrote down some notes and I'm going to ask you to maybe just listen to me as I read this, and then I will pause and ask you for your feedback. It's okay to have a bit of a script. We will always try to keep language curious. When we use curious language, the ground is level. We're both in it together. We can turn toward one another. People are less likely to grab their defenses when we keep the language curious. Also, we want to make sure that we are befriending our emotions. Like, I can't be all amped up, triggered, hooked by my emotions when I'm going into having a hard conversation, because that probably will mean that the emotion owns the room. It also probably means that it's going to come out of my mouth in a way that I didn't intend it to or mean for it to come out. And the likelihood of me being misunderstood then is way higher if I'm heightened emotionally. And so it doesn't mean that you stuff those emotions down. It doesn't mean that you plow through them, pretend that they're not there, deny them, because then they own the room even more. You got to befriend them. You have to like get your stuff together, physiologically calm the system down, some deep breaths, maybe move about, things like that. And you are going to attempt to go into that conversation in a space of almost like neutrality, which is hard because you're having a hard conversation. And so it's more of this, it's this space of like, I'm not going to be governed by my emotions. I'm the master of my emotions. And I also know that I have to have this hard conversation because if I don't, the emotions are way more overwhelming and worse. I literally teach people not to do this, and I am guilty of it the most. It's one of the things that I constantly have to work on. I have to say the thing, preferably in the moment. If my emotions are kind of befriended and I'm not being ruled by them, stop holding on to things for far too long and not saying it. Because the only thing that happens when you don't say what you need to say in the moment that you need to say it is that it just festers. And that erodes at the trust between us. And people can feel that. Even if they can't name it, they know that something's up. It is actually more damaging to relationships to not say the thing than to say it in the wrong way and screw it up. Because you can always circle back and make that right. And so say the thing. If you're all up in your emotions, take a break. Get your thinking brain back online, take a break, and come back. Just don't be waiting 3 weeks to go back to say something to someone and be like, hey, 3 weeks ago, you said this thing that was really not okay with me. And they're like, do you know how much life I've lived in 3 weeks? I have no idea what you're talking about. Plus, I can't make it right because you waited 3 weeks to talk to me about it. It's not fair. It's not okay. It's not courageous. And so when it comes to these hard conversations, one of the things that I'm working with my teams through is that, like, I think you probably definitely tend to be more one than the other, and we almost always do all of it. And so, like, when something tough is happening and you're needing to have a hard conversation or something not okay happened, and you're going to say something about it in the moment when your emotions are hopefully in check, like, that's going to be courage. You're going to come from your values. You're going to make sure your emotions are befriended. You're going to use curious language, and you're going to have an accountable feedback conversation using the courage skills. That's what we want. It feels neutral. It feels good sometimes. Even if you don't get what you need, like, you walked in courage. You chose connection over everything, and you stayed in your values. That's courage. The other two options that I think we all fall for and all do is something tough happens, and we come from like our reactive brain, our reptile brain, and we say the thing in the tone that it needed to be said, but is definitely probably not going to be received well because we said it in a reactive way. When we react, it does not feel good. And I'm going to bet it's not aligned with your values or your organization's values. One of the other ways that we tend to kind of react in hard conversations or hard things happening is that we avoid it. Like, so we sugarcoat or use avoidant language. So we say something, we don't really say what we need to say, though. We aren't very clear and concise. We don't speak expectations out loud. And you have to stop blaming people for not meeting your expectations, especially the expectations that you have never said out loud. We are not mind readers. You have to say what you want and need out loud. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it, but it's your best shot. And so we tend to come from like react, or we sugarcoat and avoid. And I think for many of us, these ways of having hard conversations, it might feel good for a moment. Like, yeah, that felt so good to say that out loud. Like, what an idiot, right? Except it doesn't last very long. And on the other side of that comes like, well, that didn't really produce the change I needed. Like, that felt pretty crappy. That wasn't aligned with my values. Or when we sugarcoat and avoid the conversation, you grow resentful and judgmental of the person because they're not changing anything because you actually didn't tell them exactly what you needed them to change because you weren't clear about it. And so we want to choose to have these hard conversations from our values, to choose curious language, to make sure our emotions are befriended. And we also always want to remember that our intention is not always our impact. Once something comes out of my mouth, I actually have no control over how you receive it. It passes through all your filters. Are you tired and hungry? Are you having a hard trauma day? Are you feeling stressed and burned out? What I say or do passes through your filters. I can do everything in my power to make sure I'm in my values, I'm choosing connection, and I'm using curious language. My intent is well. It doesn't mean that my impact is there because it still passes through your filters. And so intention is not always impact. And courageous people know when the impact is not matching to their courage. So like you show me when you don't receive what I said in a great way. Like people will avoid eye contact, they'll shrink, they'll get small, sometimes they'll puff up, get big, yell. Like people show you though. They show you. And so I then want to work on self-awareness and recognize that. Like, hey, I feel like maybe that did not come out of my mouth the way I meant it. I put the onus on me, not you. Can you tell me what you just heard me say? Like, I want to make sure I said it right. I want to make sure that I said it the way I intended, because sometimes our tone, it just comes out of our mouth and it's not in the tone that we intended. And so then we get to wrestle that out and try again. I also think there's responsibility though on the receiver, like especially if we're in a relationship built on trust and I say something to you and it doesn't land well with you, I want you to be able to say that like, hey, that actually felt pretty cutting to me. Is that how you meant it? Because 80% of the time, no, it's not how people meant it. It just came out wrong. And so when we live with grace and generosity and assuming the best of people, we name it in the moment and ask them to try again. Like, hey, I want to make sure I said that the way I meant it. Will you tell me what you just heard me say? To not have the hard conversations in a kind, clear, values aligned way means that our emotions and the unspoken things govern all of us and they overtake the rooms. And judgment and resentment just festers and builds. It erodes trust among us, among our teams, our homes, our cultures. And then we have way bigger courage issues to solve. And so I wonder, what hard conversation have you been avoiding? And maybe after watching this video, you feel a little bit more equipped to have it. If you want some more like language, especially in regards to the curious language, check out my online class. I have an online course, which it takes it's like 2.5 hours of video content. Probably if you actually pause the video and do all the reflection questions, it probably will take you about 5 hours to go through. It has a workbook that comes with it. You'll get very specific, curious language, how to walk into these hard conversations in a courageous way, along with a lot of other things, because courage is built here as 5 different pathways, and courageous conversations is just a small part of pathway 4, love others well, which is to lead others well. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Let me know what questions you have. Of course, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe and head to the link in the description to check out my online course.